We've got a big group tonight. We've got some great whiskies to drink. So I think without further ado, I will kick it off. So welcome everyone to tonight's virtual tasting. We are really excited to be able to do this. See, there's one. Rob, bloody Rob. We're really excited to be able to do this tasting as a break-even one, so that as many people as possible got the chance to sample these drams. So thank you as well to everyone who was able to show up tonight. We don't normally do a Tuesday, and with Christmas right around the corner, I know that my brain is starting to get ready for holiday mode. No doubt, I believe it's already snowing on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. The little gritter machines are out and about, a little bit of snow. But we are thrilled to be joined by Connal Mackenzie tonight. He is the first person to chat to us about Ardnamurchan Distillery, but also a little bit about Adelphi indie bottlers as well, which might get touched on. No doubt we have a whole virtual tasting for Adelphi planned in the future that I will find out about soon enough, I'm sure. But before we crack into the whiskies, I've got the housekeeping to go over. The full video is always shared in the Zoom link email for you guys. Don't drink and drive is really the most important pointer. That housekeeping video is always up on our YouTube channel, along with recordings of all our virtual tastings. Please pop your tasting notes and questions in the chat. As Ollie said, we will try and get answers for as many as we possibly can. But I personally love reading your tasting notes. So yeah, I highly would love to see them in the chat. We'll go through the tasting order quickly for the people who are watching back on YouTube on the replay. Whiskey number 1 is the Ardnamurchan 10-year-old. Number 2 is the Ardnamurchan Single Malt AD. Number 3 is the Midgie 2025 edition. Very excited. Number 4 is the Heritage Barley Golden Promise. Number 5 is the Madeira Cask. And number 6 is the Sauternes Cask Peated. So without further ado, let's start off with pouring the 10-year-old, which I believe was just released last year. Very, very exciting. Connell can obviously tell me if I'm wrong, back me up. Maybe we only got it in Australia last year. But yeah, Connell, if you want to give us a background on Ardnamurchan Distillery to kick us off.
Absolute pleasure. And yes, thank you for having me, Emma and Ollie, and the Whiskey List. It's a pleasure to be back. I think it was about a year ago since we did one of these. So it's good to be back in the Zoom world with 60 plus people in. So it's great to be here on a very damp and what we would call in Scotland dreich, which is basically miserable. Scottish weather. It's not cold enough to snow. But we have a storm coming in to Ardnamurchan in T-6 hours. So we're battling down the hatches for that. And I'm not in Ardnamurchan. I don't live there. I live just outside Inverness, which is in the Highlands as well. But there is a big storm on its way. So Ardnamurchan, another unpronounceable distillery for everyone to get to grips with. We called it Ardnamurchan because it's on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. This is pretty much as basic as that. But we come from an independent bottling company originally, which is called Adelphi. Adelphi started in 1992 with a vision of bottling just the very best what we could afford to buy and put it into bottle. It was started by a chap called Jamie Walker, who joined forces with the great Charles MacLean, MBE. You might know who I'm talking about. He's written many books on the subject of Scotch and been doing that since 1983. So fast forward a wee bit, the company was sold to two gentlemen who have land on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula in 2003, 2004, and recruited Alex Bruce, our now managing director and my boss, to the brand, and basically give him extended his passport papers and said, right, go and travel the world and shout about Adelphi. Around about 2007, 2008, it was becoming quite apparent that single cask whiskey, the stocks were starting to dry up. You know, you couldn't just go out and buy 10 casks of 1996 Clynelish. You couldn't buy Rosebank anymore. You know, forget Brora. It was just becoming a little bit tighter in every regard. So Alex sort of made the put to the board, we can either shut up shop, drink what's left in the warehouse, and say it was good. It was a good time while it lasted, buy a distillery, or build a distillery. So we opted for the building and securing our own future. So in your glass number one right now is Ardnamurchan 10. This is our second version of Ardnamurchan 10. So you were right enough, Emma. Last year we launched an unpeated version of this, which is what was our anniversary release. We're going to do a 10-year-old bottling every year until we have enough stock to essentially have a 10-year-old as a core product. But until then, it will be a yearly release. So this is version two, if you like. And the reason why we're starting with this whiskey rather than our single malt, is that this is very much bourbon cask led with very limited peat on the palate. So it's very much it's like 95% ex bourbon casks. There's two sherry hogsheads in there, and it's about 20% give or take peated malt. But our peating levels are very light, but I'll go into that earlier on. So please, as I'm just introducing our distillery, please enjoy, or hopefully enjoy, our new 10-year-old. It's bottled at 46.8, so really approachable. It's perfect breakfast whiskey. I don't know why I'm not having one right now, to be honest. But I'll make do with my coffee. So
Double
yeah,
shot
the,
coffee.
yeah. Oh, we've all been there. Let's not lie.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we built Ardnamurchan in 2013, and we found the site that we wanted to. Thank you for sharing. It's basically, if anyone's been to Ardnamurchan, it's halfway down this peninsula, which is a single track road in and out, and it's sandwiched between the Isles of Skye and Mull. So we are very, very out there on the west coast. In fact, we're the furthest western point in the whole of the British mainland, not just Scotland. To give you an idea how remote we are, we're more remote than most islands in Scotland. So, considering we're on the mainland, the people that live in Kilhoan, which is the village where most of the people who work at the distillery live, they get the ferry to Mull to go for their grocery shopping. And that is true. And it sounds ridiculous every time I say it, but that is actually true. So we are very remote. So we built the site overlooking Loch Sunart, which is in front of you, your screens there. And across the way there, at the very end of that photo, is the Isle of Mull. So we completed the build in 2014, and we ran our stills for the very first time in August the 1st, 2014. So our oldest whiskey, if you like, is just, well, it's over 11 years old now, 11 and a half-ish years old in cask. Everything that we make is matured on Ardnamurchan, and we're very much believers in the. I'm never going to say the T word, so I'm not going to say it. I'm going to think of another way of saying the T word. But the environment that we are in at Ardnamurchan is very important to us. So, we're right beside that sea loch, right out in the west coast. We're the first to get the storms. We want all that environment to have an influence, if you like, on our whiskey. I'm not going to go as far and give you the whole Disneyland speech of waves crashing against the shore, sea spray going onto the cask and all that nonsense. I'm not giving you that, but there has to be something to the environment that you mature your whiskey that has a profound effect on the final product. So we've got about 22,500 casks maturing on site, which may seem like a lot to a lot of you. It's not, to give you an idea. We have the capacity of producing 500,000 litres of alcohol a year. We've never reached that. To reach that, we would have to run a night shift, essentially. We do 2 shifts a day, 6 till 2, 2 till 10. And we've our biggest years about 405,000 litres of alcohol. So that was our biggest year. I think that was 2022, I believe. This year's has not cooperated as much, unfortunately. As I say about storms on Ardnamurchan, we had a storm, we call it Storm Amy, came through a couple of months ago, and we lost power on the peninsula for 6 days. So that was no power on the whole peninsula for 6 days. So you can imagine what that does to a mash that's just sitting there and your stills that are just sitting there when the power goes off completely. It was an interesting week. And prior to that, in Easter this year, we it's sublime to the ridiculous here. In Easter, from Easter weekend, for 7 weeks after that, we had no rain. So we actually ran out of water on the west coast of Scotland, which you may find unbelievable, as did I. So we got to the point where if we continued to make whiskey, our neighbours would not be able to flush their toilets. So we thought, well, we better stop making whiskey. We want to still be able to speak to our neighbours in and around Ardnamurchan. So the 10-year-old component that's in your glass, as I said, it's mainly ex-bourbon barrels, all from Kentucky. All this will be a mix, actually. I was going to say it's all from Old Forester bourbon. I'm sure there's a few bourbon drinkers in here tonight. Exclusively from about 2017, we've had a contract with Old Forester, and we found their casks to be the most consistent in regards to quality, and it suited our spirit fine. Back in 2015, which is when this vintage is from, so 10 years, 15 to 2025, this was a mix of probably, I think it's Maker's Mark, Bullet, Jack Daniels, and Old Forester. Don't quote me 100% on that, but I'm fairly sure. How are we doing with questions, Emma? You're going to interrupt me as and when.
Yeah,
Please
yeah.
feel free to do
Well,
so. 'Cause I
everyone is getting deliciously charred pineapple on this whiskey in
ooh
terms of tasting notes, which I kind of agree with. I was very lucky. There was a couple of drips of peated New Make spirit in the little cask filling nozzle when I was there. Um, not to get Callum in trouble, but he gave me a little
I
taster.
don't listen. We're not like that at all.
I figured.
Don't. Yeah, you can actually take photos inside our distillery as well. It's
You
amazing.
can. Well, it helped that it was closed on the day that I was there, so nothing was running. But yeah, I always get like a rub, well, like I got a really nutty flavor to it, and I think like that charred, like roasted chestnuts underbody, and then like tinned peaches as well. Ashley's getting lemon meringue pie vibes. Ian had a great alternative to the T word, which is the soul from the soil. Yeah. You can take that
Oh well.
before he copyrights
Every
it.
every time I say it, do I owe him like $1? Is that the way it's going to work?
Yeah,
The
obviously.
soul, the soul from the soil. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I did appreciate Robert. Obviously, remote anything with Merkin in the name clearly has something to hide. I will say it's more like three-quarters of the way down the peninsula. It was like an hour and a half of single lane driving. It's supposed to be 60 miles an hour, but if anyone could do over 30, it would be a miracle. Like it was the only road I've ever gotten car sick on. My husband loved it. But yeah,
It's I always say anyone who can drive the Ardnamurchan Road can drive anywhere in the world. So a little bit more on the 10-year-old here, 16,000, just over 16,000 bottles for the world. 98% bourbon casks, sorry, 2% sherry, 52% unpeated, 48% peated. Our tasting notes and nosing notes were not quite as mental as SMWS, which we love, by the way. But we like to have a bit of fun. So coconut and oat biscuits, zesty orange peel, salt sun-kissed boat deck. There you go. Autumnal leaves on a bonfire, strawberry laces with wine gums and fresh mint. Custard creams, vanilla, brine. I've seen brine quite a lot there. Earthy
yeah,
smoke and porridge oats. But I do like the pineapple. I'm gonna have to have a
yeah,
dram of that tonight and compare. I like the pineapple. Charred pineapple's great.
yeah. Quickly, David asked, "What's the difference between version one and version two? Is the peak component different? Is that kind
Yeah.
of the main
So
one?"
2014, when we were wanted to launch a 10-year-old last year and celebrate, hey, it's our birthday, we did it 10 years old, because 10 years old is quite a significant milestone for any independent distillery. So we wanted to sort of celebrate. So in 2014, we started in August the 1st. So we only had sort of 4.5, 5 months of distillate to play with. And in 2014, we didn't use peat smoke at all in our barley. We only used unpeated distillate. So what we did was we took some 2014 stuff back in 2023. We re-racked it into what we call our Paul Noir casks. So they're ex Champagne Barrique or ex 100% Chardonnay, but that wine goes on to be champagne. So we used a combination of those casks. It was 50-50 actually between that and bourbon casks, completely unpeated, bottled at a slightly higher ABV of 50%. And that was genuinely just a one-off whiskey to celebrate we turned 10. This 10-year-old that you've got in your glass now is progressively going to get more complex as the years go on. And if my sums or Alex's sums are correct, I think it's 2029, 2028 maybe, that we'll be able to continually produce a 10-year-old whiskey as a core product. So we need to get there first. So yeah, this is a sort of work in progress, if you will.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we might move on to whiskey number two.
Yeah,
And I suppose this kind of ties in. Andrew was wondering why that site was chosen for the distillery. Was it the remoteness? Was it connection to the area? And I know there's more cows than people on that peninsula. It's like very, very far out. So what was the reason behind that?
I think there's 373 people that live in Ardnamurchan. There's
Yeah.
more people here on the Zoom that live on Ard, it's yeah, it's a very remote place in Scotland. It doesn't get as you'll go far and few between places in Scotland that are as remote as Ardnamurchan. The reason why we're independently owned by two families essentially, and they have some land on there. One of the owners operates the Ardnamurchan estate, so it was a really good chance for us to sort of lean on the estate, and the estate could lean on us. And what I mean by that is that pretty much apart from casks, which we do the bottling down in Adelphi's warehouse down just north of Edinburgh, makes sense for logistics and all that sort of stuff. And believe me, if you've seen the road, which Emma has, you'll agree you want to keep as many lorries and things off that road as possible. So we try and do everything as we can on site. So that's all our waste, our byproducts, everything like that. We try and give back. So yeah, we feed all the local cows, the stags, the sheep, the you name it. Um, but yeah, essentially we own that land. We wanted to produce a West Highland stone whiskey. Stone. I'm looking at the Howard's tasting notes there. Stone fruits. A West Coast style of whiskey. Not a pretty whiskey by any means. We wanted a rugged, interesting, complex whiskey that the Highlands were known for. Just look down the west coast of Scotland. It's there is a reason why people say west is best. And no offense to anyone on the east coast, we love you too. But yeah, I love my west coast whiskies. And Alex really, you talk about Alex's favorite whiskies, Kalila, Bunnahabhain. He loves west coast. And yeah, look at and Campbelltown as well. So that was the reason behind it. We needed to have a strong water source. We do have that, even though I told you we ran out of water this year. That was a freak of nature. But we've got good water, and it's the perfect maturation climate for Scotch, the West Coast. It really doesn't fluctuate. Now, you were talking about snow. We really rarely see snow in Ardnamurchan. It would be very rare to see it. I mean, you're much more, I was in Speyside yesterday. Speyside gets lots and lots of snow, but the West Coast, typically where we are, very, very little.
Yeah, that's interesting because yeah, when my husband and I were there, we drove from Duffton, Elgin, 4 hours to the distillery. And we had just left behind a snowstorm in Aberdeen. So yeah, it was interesting to see like how bright and clear the peninsula was. And I think as well there's this ruggedness to the west coast of Scotland that is just unique. I mean, for first things first, the accent is thicker and harder to understand the further west you go. But it's yeah, really, really beautiful place. So tell
So
us about the
two things there. There's no way on earth that you drove 4 hours from Duffton unless you were in a Ferrari or a Concorde.
it was a
Maybe you
Sunday
fell
and we
asleep.
were making
Maybe
good
you fell
time, I
asleep.
promise.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're doing really well if you drove 4 hours from Duffton to Ardnamurchan, I tell you. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, people in Aberdeen are fairly hard to understand as well. And sorry, I should have said, I hope everyone can understand me. I speak fairly good English for a Scotsman, and I will continue to try and do so.
No, it was very good. I will say, yeah, the when I was there and I got the tour from Callum, one of the marketing guys who I love and who you may dip into the lock for the advertisement for the Midgie. So he really must love his job. But he was sort of like, yeah, there's like only one lorry driver that's prepared to like risk driving those roads. They've lost like what is it, 5 or 10 lorries from drivers going a bit
Uh,
skew with.
there's been a few things there, yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
as I said, one more thing on the road, and then we'll put the road to bed. But the road, the size of the distillery is based on the road. We size the distillery on the road. So our biggest piece of equipment is our mash tun. It's 3.2 meters wide, and that was basically the capacity of the road. So we sized our distillery based on the road, which is a bit silly, but also the only thing we could do. Andrew, can't pronounce your last name, but yes, you're absolutely spot on. We're going to move on to the Ardnamurchan single malt, AD single malt. So this is our bread and butter, something that we've been doing since 2020, and every year it gets a little bit older. So we are looking at a 65% ex-bourbon cask to 35% sherry. So you're right. It's 50-50 split of peated and unpeated distillate. And this essentially is a snapshot of everything we do in a calendar year. So we fill pretty much 65 to 35% sherry to bourbon casks. I'll talk a bit more about cask maturation later. And we do about 6 months peated, 6 months unpeated distillate. So this is essentially what a year looks like in Ardnamurchan in bottle. We're very proud of this whiskey, and every year we've tried to use older stock. So I think the stock that you'll be drinking just now is around about 6 to 7 years old. It is an on-age statement whiskey, 46.8% natural color and chill filtered. But hopefully you should find this whiskey maybe a little bit more ramped up in peat smoke. Again, not strong peat smoke. I mean, our peating levels are 30 ppm, and for those who may know what that means, or those who don't know what that means, essentially that's ppm is phenolic parts per million. So that's the spec that you peat your barley at to create that smoky flavor. And to give you an idea, from 0 to let's just say 60, because they say around 60, the palate can't really detect beyond that. So 60, 55, 60s, Ardbeg and Kilchoman on Islay, different style of peat altogether. We're 30, and that's barley spec. In the bottle, it's probably more like 12 to 15 in the bottle. So that's how we measure the peatiness of our whiskey in Scotland. So we use Highland peat. We haven't used Ardnamurchan peat yet. I say yet because we do have a malt floor, and we do intend to use that, and we do intend to cut Ardnamurchan peat. But at the time, we use a maltster, which we contract our barley. So we get our barley specced in Inverness, which is where I live. And we stipulate our peating levels to the maltster. So he malts the barley and delivers it to us by the truckload. So for me, again, it's bourbon casks. It'll be pretty much mainly now Old Forester, and the split of sherry is out of that 35%. It's about 90% Oloroso and about 10% Pedro Jimenez or PX sherry, which are all first fill and fully matured in sherry at this stage. That might change as time goes on. But yeah,
Yeah,
any
well,
other?
so everyone's getting the nutty notes. I on first sip got like milk chocolate covered macadamias. That like and Leo's getting some green vegetative notes, palate's milk chocolate honey, Mark's getting peanut brittle, Liam's getting honey nougat, milk chocolate develops into orange peel and majoram. Jamie, lots of brine and salt, yeah, for sure. Like especially on the finish when like you get that last little lingering in your mouth, like there is that saltiness to it, which is beautiful. Ash is getting orange blossom as well. Um, yeah, Howard says it's a huge step up from the 10. Definitely in like in that heat and that depth of flavor. And I think it's great that it's you have that similarity between the two, but there is like a distinct profile for each of them that
There's
appeals to different.
definitely the same DNA is there. And thank you for reading out the tasting notes, because I'm not going to be much use on tasting notes apart from my memories. But yeah, I'm gonna continue on the old caffeine just now. I've got a long day
Yeah,
ahead.
100%. Well, should we? I was speaking about the Midgie before, and obvious has maybe we should explain what a Midgie is, like what a midge bug is first before we
Yeah,
delve into.
so this whiskey is really the idea of this whiskey happened about 2.5 years ago, where we were looking at producing a whiskey and paying homage to something on the peninsula, something particular to Ardnamurchan. And you know, we're not like Australia. You guys have got every cool insect, creature, animal, under the sun. You've taken it all and you've kept it to yourselves. So, but which a lot of people would be thankful for, to be fair. You've taken that burden. But in Scotland, we've got pretty boring stuff. Like we've got very little to choose from. So we kind of thought about nature, flora and fauna kind of vibe, and we thought, well, Ardnamurchan, the venison of Ardnamurchan, the stags are very famous. Can't do the stags. I mean, Dalmore have got that stitched up, right? You can't start copying that. So you're going, okay. Then you start looking at the sea eagle, the white-tailed sea eagle, which is, pretty much the biggest population of them is between Ardnamurchan and Mull. So yeah, you could argue that the sea eagle could go in there, but Isle of Arran, they've got the eagles on their labels. We don't want to copy those guys. They're doing a great job doing what they're doing. So then you start going, well, yes, okay, we've got lots of otters on in Ardnamurchan, but I can't really see a whiskey called the Otter. So anyway, my colleague Graham Mackay said, well, the most famous thing about Ardnamurchan, surely from a flora and fauna perspective, is the Midgie. Now, a Midgie is essentially our version of a mosquito, but you can't see them, you can't hear them, and they're just like silent assassins. And sometimes they come in clouds where you've got no chance of escaping. Um, and they don't suck your blood. They simply just try and eat your flesh. Um, and they're tiny. They're really tiny, and they come out around the end of May and they stay until September time. And Ardnamurchan's known for the Midgie. They're all across the West Coast. It's not like it's special to Ardnamurchan, but they're notoriously bad. I mean, I remember when I first started, I walked into the still house on a summer's day. Believe it or not, we do have that big yellow thing in the sky that produces heat. That happens from time to time in Scotland. And 2018, summer off, I walked into the still house. It must have been about 55 degrees Celsius. And the stillman was standing there in a full-blown beekeeper suit because of the midges. So yeah, they're it's no joke. They are really quite bad when they're bad. So we thought, well, let's just make a whiskey and call it the Midgie. And yeah, the story gets even more ridiculous. There's also an insect repellent brand called Smidge over here in Scotland. And it's the most successful insect repellent brand. So we decided to collaborate with an insect repellent brand um, and launch the first whiskey. We wanted to use their artwork on the label, and we've moved on from that now. That was just for the first release. What's in your glass is Midgie 2, which we had well, just actually a fan of ours, a chap called Arne. He actually drew the Midgie for us. But yeah, people said, well, are you not mad collaborating with an insect repellent for your whiskey? And we were like, well, there's a nice tie in there somewhere. In the meantime, you've got like Bowmore collaborating with Aston Martin. Ardnamurchan are collaborating with an insect repellent brand. Yes. So the Midgie was a UK, Midgie Batch 1 was a UK only release. We thought it would be a bit niche, to be honest. But there's been a bit of a demand around the world for it, so we thought, who cares? Let's get out there. Let's produce a bigger batch for batch 2, which is what's in your glass right now. And the thought process behind the Midgie is that the Midgie will change each year, and that's the current plan. So last 2024 was a combination of Madeira. There's a little bit of Sauternes in there, and some bourbon casks. This batch, you've got bourbon casks and you've got port casks, essentially, port pipes, port barriques, sorry. All ruby port and all full maturation. There's also one singular sherry butt in there for good measure. That just added a little bit more texture to the mid palate. 48% ABV. It's mainly unpeated as well. 75% unpeated spirit to 25% peated. So quite different to batch one if you manage to try batch one for whatever reason. But I really love it. I love the fruitiness to it. It's got actually, yeah, there is a funk. There's that fruity funkiness. I like where you're going there. I mean, on the nose from our tasting notes, we've got gammon, we've got torch pineapple on this one randomly. Um, Prunes dipped in salt, strawberry jam on a salty cracker, almond oil, macaroons, and mint, spearmint. On the palate, we talk about salt baked pears, wildflowers, lemon, thyme, sultanas, cherry wood, embers, cocoa powder, and pink peppercorns. So yeah, but yeah, for me, it's a really dangerously drinkable dram. For me, the Midgie, approachable but good strength. I think 48% ABV is a great strength to put out something out at. It's the kind of whiskey that I can just see you having a fire outside with friends. You just rip the cork off, you throw the cork in the fire, and that's the end of it. It's a really easy to drink, dangerously sessionable whiskey, responsibly, of course.
Yes, yes. Quaffable, but responsibly quaffable.
Yes,
I,
I've done my RSA.
yeah. I feel like as well that having like the Midgie repellent and a bottle of whiskey is like the perfect camping pack. Whereas, obviously Bilmore's is a bit drink drivey, but like I feel like if you just had that at a supermarket, you just wrap it around the side and it comes as a kit, that would be perfect.
Well, I mean, the actual whiskey itself, we you buy a bottle, you have some, you're basically Midgie proof, so they won't go near you.
Yeah,
It writes it
exactly.
right it, it writes itself. Marketing.
Yee. I thankfully have never encountered midgies, but I imagine they're like our blowflies, but tiny and more annoying.
Yeah.
Like I hate blowfly blights anyway. But yeah, Jamie picked up on that sherry and ruby port noticeably sweeter. S'mores is a great one. Um, Rob says you could have gone with the earthworm. You know, make the jokes about having a whole bottle in your legless, maybe. Um, but yeah, I got a lot of like orange notes, orange cream and soda, milk chocolate. Tim also got milk chocolate on the palate. Um, Rob says who puts embers into tasting notes? Um, Howard eminently emptyable in a single session. Uh, yeah, it's very, very like that cherry tone really brings a chewy quality to it that is just so enjoyable. Like you could just drink it and not think about it, but it's got enough character to it that it is just beautiful. I think we've got a couple of questions about casks and cask types. Sam wants to know when you're releasing the Foursquare rum cask. But with a lot of these casks, do you do much second fill, or is it predominantly first fill filtration?
As a percentage, we do about 20% refill wood every year. But you're never first fill wood's great. It's active and it gives you that initial hit that you need, especially for a young distillery. But from about 20, I think Alex started doing it properly in 2018. We fill about 20% of what we do into refill wood, be it refill sherry, refill bourbon, um, which is predominantly what we do. We're fairly traditional in that regard. We about 90% of what we do is bourbon and sherry casks. And yes, we have experimented with other types, and that's what forms our limited release range. But yeah, 20% is refill. But we also have rum casks, we have mezcal casks, we have tequila casks, Sauternes casks, Tokai casks, which is what I'm going to be looking at next week when I go to the distillery, is seeing what these Tokai casks are doing, because they are very active, but you have to look at them so often, because if they go over past a point, they can become a tannic mess. So we've got to keep an eye on these casks as much as we can. But yeah, it's very important to have refill wood because obviously the more refill wood you have, the longer your whiskey will be able to stay in cask.
Yeah, cool. Also related to cask, but we'll move on to whiskey number four, because it might kind of tie in a bit. So moving on to the heritage barley. When you guys are making peated spirit, do you predominantly put it into like one cask type or the other? Do you find that you're drawn towards filling peated into ex-bourbon or into ex-sherry? I know there is a great peated sherry release. Is there kind of that trend at the distillery, or is it a bit whatever suits the mood?
Well, no, we feel both. I mean, this is a really, really horrible sort of metaphor, but yeah, obviously, the more styles of distillate and more styles of casks, the more of a colourful picture you can paint when we're blending. In fact, we've got a blending session tomorrow. We're blending the new. Oh, this has been recorded, isn't it? Okay.
If you
We're
say we'll
blending
edit
the
this out, we'll edit this
yeah,
out.
no, don't edit it. Bugger it, I've gone too far now. It's the new Paul Lenoir release we're blending tomorrow. That's going to be for a March-ish launch. There's been a lot of hype and demand for it because we missed out this year with Paul Lenoir, which is our champagne cask batch. So we're doing that tomorrow amongst another couple of bits and pieces. And looking out for some single casks as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think from a peating, we're dictated by the barley schedule. So it doesn't work as I wish it would work as easy as this. It's not like January to June we do unpeated, and then July to December we do peated. It comes in batches. The beautiful thing about Ardnamurchan is Alex saw this when he realized we were going to do both styles. He pretty much put two lots of pipe work in. So we don't need to clean the pipes between. We have an unpeated line and a peated line. And of course we clean the stills, but the pipes are the real thing that you need to change. So yeah, we can be pretty reactive as and when. And one other little tidbit for everyone here today as well is that we're going to be looking at for the first time, we're going to be looking at our heavily peated Ardnamurchan, which we haven't looked at yet. And that started in 2020 or 2021, 2020. So yeah, it's 5 years old now. And that's heavily peated up to 80 ppm. So we're going to be looking at that tomorrow in depth as well. So what does heavily peated Ardnamurchan taste like? But on the absolute opposite scale to heavily peated Ardnamurchan is the heritage barley, which I honestly think we'll divide the room 50% here, maybe even higher. This is not an easy whiskey to get on with. It is 59.2% ABV, natural cask strength. It's completely unpeated. It's very distillate forward. Now I'll talk about the barley in a minute, but it's completely unpeated and it's completely from bourbon casks. So all bourbon, nothing else in there. So I think it's fair to say it's Ardnamurchan in its birthday suit. It is we're basically saying, hey, this is what Ardnamurchan tastes like. Um, this is our yeah, pure distillate driven whiskey. We want to do something like this for a while. I think it shows confidence and potentially it could have been a bit of a car crash, but we feel so strongly that our distillate is great that we've decided to opt for this Heritage Barley series release. Now, barley, we don't talk maybe enough about barley in whiskey. It is one of the main components, if not the most main component of how we make whiskey. And this is what we call it's from Golden Promise barley, which is an older grain, I suppose, was made extremely famous, I suppose, by Macallan back in the 70s, 80s time, when they were exclusively using it. It delivers a much more viscous, funky mouthfeel, oily textured mouthfeel. The yield that you get from a standard barley strain is shocking. To give you an idea, we will, on average, per ton of barley, we will yield around 400 liters of alcohol. Golden Promise, you'll be about 365, 370, which is quite a drop. especially when you're paying quite a lot more for the barley as well. So it's more expensive. You get less out of it. Why would you do it? Commercially, it makes absolutely zero sense. But for us, it's yeah, we've been filling Golden Promise every year since 2018 for about a month of production. So yeah, it's you're going to see this in the future. We've got it in sherry, we've got it in PX sherry, we've got it in bourbon, we've got it in octaves. It's in various woods. So we're really happy with the way this is our first release, our inaugural, if you like, of this series, and it will be making its way. It'll be landing here in the Australian market very, very soon. So it will be available. I hope you like it. I won't be offended if you don't. But yeah, for just tasting notes wise, I'm just going to rattle off a few here. We've got, freshly opened milk chocolate digestive biscuits, if you know what that means. If you have digestive biscuits in Australia, I can't remember. Glass of cherries, lime cordial, marzipan, apricot jam, sourdough toast, um, long grass, chewable, oily mouthful, marzipan, sugared almonds, salted cashews, pistachios, creamy sweetness, rich orange polenta cake. That has to be Antonia who wrote that. Baked cooking apples with fizzy lemonades, Peshwari naan filling. There you go. So there's lots going on. And it's obviously very high alcohol. So if that's sitting okay in the palate, great. I also think it takes water quite well as well.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think it is the whiskey that has blown up the chat the most so far. I think I was like trying to
definitely.
keep on top of them, and it was just like, oh, more and more and more. It's so good. Like wow, micro drop, beautifully dirty. This rules, fantastic. Love it, cracking. I hope 50% of people don't like it. I'll take their share, says Troy. It's super good. Yeah,
Oh, good.
Tim says it's slightly savory, slightly funky, a little salty. Yeah, I was getting a lot of the salty tones too. Reminds him of some of his favorite IPs. Santa, all I want for Christmas is Ardnamurchan Heritage Barley. Absolutely love it. Yeah, so good, outstanding. Um, Best mouthfeel so far of the night. Howard says the nose reminds him of the barley sugar lollies his grandmother gave him or ate. I see Oliver is chomping at the bit to ask a question. Yes, go on.
So, Connell, if I've understood you correctly, this is what Macallan in bourbon casks in the 60s tasted like, basically. Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to go down that route. I'm not going to confirm or deny that. But what I'm saying is that how do I make this sound polite while it's being recorded? So yeah, Macallan of the 70s, 80s, and possibly even 90s era. I don't know how many people have tried that, but I remember very vividly as a sort of 14, 15-year-old lad, my dad, if he had a good week, he was self-employed. If he had a good week, he would take a bottle of Macallan 10, the old label, home with him on a Friday night. And I remember him, I was sort of one of the first whiskies I got to sort of try. That Talisker and Mortlach Flora and Fauna were the sort of whiskies that I got into, was my first sort of look at. So I think, Macallan back then was really quite tremendous. I'm not saying anything about what it is now. It is what it is. But I think it's definitely different to what it is now. And I think Macallan of that era was legendary for that viscous, oily texture, mouthfeel sherry cask dram. Now we've got Golden Promise and sherry, and we have released a few single casks, but not a batch release. So maybe watch this space. But yeah, I think obviously you can't compare Ardnamurchan with Speyside because it's two different styles of area, distillate, all the rest of it. But hopefully it gives you a sort of idea of what we're trying to do. And bearing in mind that this whiskey alone is 20, it's not, it was almost 7 years old, so it's not quite seven yet. So it just gives you the idea of where that whiskey can be heading every year it matures. I think we're onto something quite exciting here.
Yeah, I think as well. I mean, as someone who has been lucky enough to try some of the like, old school Macallans and just blown away by how incredible they were, I think that this is a great opportunity. Yes, Speyside and the west coast of the Highlands are very different, but I think this is going to be a really cool opportunity to try and see and revive and see if palates are still interested and still drawn towards that style of mineralic sherry cask heritage barley. I'm very, very, very excited for it. And I think a lot of the people in the chat can probably agree. Troy has a great question. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, no, carry
Yeah.
on, please.
Yeah, so you call it heritage barley rather than golden promise. Does it mean that there are other barley varieties that you guys are experimenting with that are on the way?
Oh, yeah. Um,
Pause, hit edit again.
no, 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 we are. We absolutely are. And there is a reason why it's, I mean, it might not be, well, yes, we are. In short, we are dealing with a few different styles of barley. It might be still be Golden Promise next year and the year after, but there are going to be other barley varietals coming through. So yes, that's why we've been careful to call it a heritage barley release rather than just the Golden Promise release, because there are other things on the horizon. And Scott Brickhill, I'm glad that you've got that mineralic note, because that's something that we talk about a lot around the blending table, is that mineralic that we get in Ardnamurchan. And I honestly don't know where it comes from, but I have a theory, and I'll share it with you before we move on to the next dram. And the theory is water. And I'm not talking about production water, but I'm talking about reduction water. So when we take it off at still strength, you're sitting at around 70% ABV. We fill our casks at 63.5% ABV, which is standard in the industry. But from 70 to 63.5, that's a fair percentage on which we use just water. And we use that water that comes off the top of the hill behind where the warehouses are at the distillery. So that water has been hit by the elements all the time. It's just running off. It's soft, mineralic, peaty water. Now, if I gave you a glass of that water to drink, which would be nothing wrong with it, but if I line that up with a glass of water from Sydney, New York, Taipei, and Berlin, and asked you to try these different waters, you might not be able to tell me what the difference was, but you would certainly be able to tell me that these waters taste different. Now, that's my thought. That's my theory, is that it's the reduction water that we use gives us that saline mineralic note to Ardnamurchan. I could be completely wrong, and we don't know for sure. But that's why we all love whiskey, is because no one quite knows where and why these things happen. I think that's the dark arts is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's very cool. Well, we might move on to, I mean, we're speaking about sherry cask with Macallan. We might move on to the Ardnamurchan Madeira cask. You guys have done some fun, cool, interesting cask types. Obviously, we were talking about the Paul Lanois before that champagne cask. Um, it is there, are you particularly drawn to interesting sherry casks? Is it something that you guys want to integrate more of, see how it kind of fits into spirit profile? I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think sherry is there's so much more to sherry than Oloroso and PX, right? Oloroso being the most popular sherry cask that's used in the industry. We tend to use PX sherry as seasoning, salt and pepper. You don't need a whole lot of it. But we're not just looking at those two sherries. We've in and two come from Ardnamurchan. We've got Palo Cortado, Fino, Manzanilla, Amontillado. We've got these sherry casks that are sitting there just sleeping quietly until we decide to wake one of them up and have a look. The world of sherry is just a complete minefield, and then once you go down that rabbit hole, it's quite hard to get back out of it. But yeah, Madeira wise, and we like things that are fortified at Ardnamurchan. We're not well, I'll never say never, but there's not one STR cask. Not that there's anything wrong with STR, but there's not one STR cask in our warehouse. There's not one red wine cask in our warehouse as of yet. And again, I'm not saying never, but we do like fortified things. So the Madeira cask is obviously Madeira is fortified, as is port. The next thing on my hit list would be Marsala, which I'm looking at. But yeah, Madeira, we get a really good supply of Madeira casks, great quality. This Madeira cask in question is all, I believe, from 2018, and I think it was about 4.5 years in ex-bourbon casks before then being re-racked into Madeira barriques. It's 43% peated, 57% unpeated. bottled at 52%. And the only reason why it was bottled at 52% is that we always try everything at natural strength, and then we reduce down literally by 1% ABV until we get it right on the palate for us. It would be so much easier just to go, let's just bottle it at 50 and get on with it. But we don't do that. We choose to sit down and reduce it in stages, which, believe me, is quite painful until we get it right. So this is 52%. It was a big batch. It was about 18,000 bottles all told for around the world. And again, this will be available in market. Tasting notes of what we have is cocoa powder, stewed plums, sugared almonds, bread and butter pudding, nutmeg, sandalwood, fruit scones, and red currants. Salted trail mix with chocolate chips, rosemary, toffee apples, pine needles, strawberries with black pepper. Is what we've got there on this whiskey. But yeah, this is our second batch of Madeira. We did a completely unpeated batch. I think it was about 4 years ago now, maybe 3, which was bottled at cask strength. But this, for me, I think is a much more put together whiskey than the first batch, and something that I've really grown to love as an alternative to our sherry cask release.
Yeah, for sure. It's lovely and rich. Madeira is such like a like baking spice forward sherry, and I think this really exemplifies it as well. I am also getting like a lot of Starbucks makes this peppermint hot chocolate for Christmas. And I can only get it during Christmas time here, and it's reminding me of that American peppermint syrup and cocoa powder. I love Ashley's tasting note, the Gillian. I don't know how you say them. You know, the praline seashell chocolates. Um,
Yeah. They come in the fancy box. Yeah.
yeah.
I know.
And
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
like, why are they seashells? Who knows? Every nan has them. But yeah, Tim, dessertish, rich sticky date pudding, jammy too. Liam's fave so far, great balance, rich and viscous. Pronunciation was on point. Woohoo, that never happens for me. Jamie's also getting that minty note, and some bread and butter pudding. Um, uh, Scott recommended a water tasting, which we have already done. I don't need that PTSD in my life again. But Ollie's got a
You
great
actually did a
question.
water tasting.
We did. Imagine you've
Wow.
like had a big long day. You've just got off a flight. Your flight was delayed by like 2, 3 hours. You just got off a flight. You sit down. You're so keen for food. You haven't eaten in 6 hours, and all of a sudden, someone puts these bottles in front of you and asks you to do a water comparison tasting. I was about to cry. I was like, "Just feed me." It was fun, and it was interesting.
I'm crying at you telling me the story. That is grim.
I know. And I'm like, I'm sure it was fun, but I was not the person that I needed to be when it was happening. But it was really interesting to see what the results were. There was like a consensus between 3 of the group, and then I did not have the same consensus. So either I'm wrong or they're wrong, and I believe to choose it's
Yeah.
them. But Ollie has a great question. Is there a cask that, like, obviously you were saying red wine cask, no STR. Is there a cask that you would that is absolutely no go, or is there a cask that you like really, really wish you could get your hands on?
Well, I've actually completed the one that I can get my hands on because I've been trying to do it for a few years now, and that's Mizanara. I just, for whatever reason, we've come close and never really managed to get it over the line. So yeah, and it's not a big release, a big cask. It's just a few sort of smaller casks from Mizanara. No, I mean, and as I said, STR and red wine, they might well make their way at some stage into the Ardnamurchan warehouse, but it's just not really our style of flavor for whiskey. I think you got to be really careful with wine as well. It can go south quite quickly if you're not constantly in your warehouse. So yeah, I much prefer, as I say, we much prefer sort of fortified stuff. Um, we did a we did a whiskey that in fact, one of your good friends as well as mine, a chap by the name of Angus McRailed, who is Decadent Drinks, the whiskey sponge. He was in the warehouse looking for some casks for his independent bottling company, and I just basically said, right, there's the bung extractor. there's the lunch, go and have fun. And so off he went, and we were in the warehouse too, but he was just climbing about casks and generally creating a nuisance as he normally does. And he opened this cask and immediately shouted, "Connal, you're going to want to come and have a look at this." So we stuck our nose in the cask, and it was probably the most foul smelling thing I've ever had the privilege of putting my nose into. So we got it into a glass, and it was just, I mean, it was blue cheese, sweaty socks, tires, everything. It was foul. The palate was actually reasonably drinkable, but the nose was so bad. So anyway, believe it or not, I'm sure many of you have met Angus via virtually or in market, but he wanted to buy that cask, as you can imagine, which I said absolutely not. So anyway, we worked out it was an ex-Adelphi cask, which we had filled with Ardnamurchan. Now, usually the filling team, the warehouse team, they knows every single cask before they fill it with new make spirit. So this one has obviously gone under the radar. We filled it. We worked out it was an ex-sherry cask whiskey that had been sat out in the rain for a bit too long and had become infected, essentially. And we never spotted it. Now, what do you do with a whiskey like that? It was so pungent that you couldn't you couldn't even blend it out. It was that bad. So you couldn't just go, let's just drop this into a big batch of Ardnamurchan and we'll just hope it dissipates. No chance. We were going to take that risk. So we decided I look back at it now going, that was quite risky. So obviously we have Adelphi, which is our independent bottling company. We decided to bottle the whiskey, and instead of calling it Ardnamurchan on the label, we called it Ardnamurchan on the label. And that whiskey genuinely sold out within like 6 hours because people are strange and weird and psychotic. And so, yeah, if I think casks that freak me out are infected casks like that. And I'm glad to report that I'm fairly, out of the 22,000 casks, obviously I'm not experienced with all of them, but of all the casks that I've tried in that warehouse, that's the only one that's like that. So thankful to report.
Yeah, I remember him sort of talking about it. He was very miffed. He was like, "Well, I found it. Like I had
Yeah,
to
I mean
buy it."
he should have had rights to it, but yeah, there's no way out.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine the label? No,
Oh man,
no,
I
no.
think it would have gone too far into like Pickle Rick territory. He
Well,
would have been having a lawsuit
here's
there.
I wanted to put Pickle Rick on the label, which I randomly know a guy who knows someone who worked in Rick and Morty, a guy in New York, and I messaged him saying, "Do you think that I would get a lawsuit for putting Pickle Rick on the label?" And he said, "Nah, they'll just ask you to recall it, but because it's a single cask, you can't recall it." So I should have done it, to be honest, but I chickened out at the end.
Yeah, it's one of those
There's a
things.
niche reference for some people there.
Oh, for sure. I think we might move on to the final whiskey of the night. I'm personally the most excited to taste this one because when I was at the distillery, they gave me a taste of the regular unpeated Sauternes that was launched last year, I believe. And so I was there on a Sunday, which is not normally an open day during the winter. So I super appreciate Callum making his way out of his little camper van to come greet us. But I couldn't buy it because all the machines were off and he didn't know how to work it. So I now thankfully have my hands on a bottle of it, but I'm probably unfortunately going to have to get my hands on a bottle of this as well if it lives up to the same level of love as the previous one. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the Sauternes Peated?
Indeed, yeah, absolutely. But just there's a few comments here. Um, yeah, no, he's a pest, but he makes great whiskey. Yeah, I mean, Angus is a very good friend, personal friend of mine. So yeah, I always try and have a dig when I can. But yeah, he's great. And Scott says something about the best. Yeah, so there's a cask number doesn't matter, 685 actually, 685 from 2015. It's a refill Oloroso sherry hogshead, and yes, it is, I think, the best sherry cask in our warehouse. And Angus is desperate for it, but yeah, not going to happen. He got top five from 2015. Let's put it that way.
And he should be
Um,
happy about it.
he should be absolutely. So anyway, last dram of the evening is our Sauterne cask. So This time it's peated. So last year we did an unpeated Sauterne, which was 8 years old. This one's 7, just under 7 actually, I think, all told. Just over 8,000 bottles. Now this is interesting, and this is a debate for the room. So this release is 29 ex-bourbon casks, which were aged for 3 years. So turned whiskey, then we re-racked them into Sauterne Barrique for 3.75 years. So essentially, it's had more time in Sauternes than it has bourbon. So at that point, is this classed as a finished whiskey, or is this classed as a secondary maturation? And there's no clear line with the SWA on that. In general terms, finish is 3 months, which I think is too little, but 3 months is pretty much what they say up until whenever. So I would suggest that this is, if it's longer than the first vessel, I think it's a double maturation for me. It's 100% peated spirit, unchill filtered natural color, obviously, bottled at 50%. But I think this is a really great alternative whiskey for maybe people who just want something a little bit more different than sherry. Sauternes is a hard cask to manage. Again, you've got to keep an eye on it, but when you get it right, hopefully, it pays dividends in regards to flavor. So tasting notes, nosing notes from us, we've got lime leaf, shortbread, pineapple upside down cake, desiccated coconut, stem ginger syrup, pencil shavings, and tobacco on the nose. Nutmeg, orange blossom, smoked Manuka honey. There's a nod to New Zealand there. Lemon meringue pie, salted cashew nuts, cremola foam. I don't know if you guys know what cremola foam is. Tizer, hickory wood, and farmy smoke, whatever farmy smoke is. But yeah, it's a bit funky. It's punchy. With even at 50%, I think it's quite punchy, but it's still got that very sort of luscious sweetness with that peat smoke in the back of the palate. So yeah, Sauternes casks we like with the spirit. It offers a different style to sherry for people who want that sweet peat vibe. Yeah, hopefully you like it.
Mm. Yeah, definitely that Manuka note, that like creamy or like creamed honey, when you get whipped honey, kind of tone to it. But I feel like if you dropped whipped honey in a campfire and then we're like, I'm committed to still drinking this, it's or eating this. But yeah, so this is the label there. I think I think someone earlier is the stripe down the label, the new method to denote peated spirit for these like cask, like interesting cask releases. I haven't seen any on the blue sherry cask ones, but was it just this label, or is it something you might carry over into the other ones?
The stripe.
Yeah.
The stripe was too significant because we did 2 releases within a sort of 8 to 9 month period. We wanted to make sure that, if there was any unpeated still left in market, that there was a differentiation between the two labels. We went for yellow because when I think of Sauternes, I just think yellow. I don't know if anyone.
Same.
Yeah, and that is simply it, really. It's like Sauternes cask. What color do you see? I mean, and for me, it's just yellow all day long. Sauterne, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure most of you will know what a Sauterne is, but it's obviously a French dessert style of wine, usually had with a cheese board or at the end of dinner with dessert. Delicious, very viscous, nutty, luscious tropical fruit. You can't have a whole lot of it, but you get those sort of nuances from the casks. And the casks in question, I don't know the vineyard. And before I get asked a question, I don't know if it's Chateau Yquem. Before I get that asked every single time, is it Chateau Yquem? It might be. I don't know. We obviously, as we move on with our cask buying procedures, we always try to get to the bottom of provenance of where those casks are coming from. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We've got full transparency of our sherry casks, full transparency of our bourbon casks. But as we start to get more exotic, like mezcal and tequila, Sauternes from time to time, I've now had full transparency of our Madeira. But yeah, we're always trying to work with the supplier to find out as much as possible how long the wine stayed in the cask, which vineyard it came from, where it was recoopered, etc., etc. Yeah, transparency for us is paramount. And I've completely our marketing manager, Jenny Carlson, will absolutely murder me if I don't raise. See, this is what I do. I end up going on tangents, right? And I don't mention the bullet points I have written down here. I always forget to do it. So I'm gonna have to very quickly, before we wrap this up, tell you about our sustainable credentials, which I'm going to do in a minute. Okay, you ready? So we built Ardnamurchan in 2014 because and we decided to build it as a sustainable distillery because it's in the middle of nowhere and it didn't make any sense to use oil. So we looked at other ways to power the plant. We have massive forestry in Scotland, especially in Ardnamurchan. So we use wood chip to fuel all our to fuel a biomass boiler fuels a steam accumulator, which drives the heat for the whole plant. We have solar panels on our warehouses, and we have a hydroelectric generator on our river, which runs adjacent to the distillery. So basically, thank you. That's why I went wrong, Ollie. I had this slide all prepared and just totally skipped past it. No, it's not your fault. So basically, what I'm saying is we had a chance to make a responsible distillery. We took that chance to try and limit our footprint on an absolutely beautiful part of Scotland. It's just something that you should be doing if you have the chance. I am not here with my big green flag saying that, everyone who uses oil is a nightmare. You can hardly tell someone who's been making whiskey like Springbank for 200 years to change their methods. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying as a new distillery, we had an easier in to do that. So we took it with both hands. So yeah, there you go. That was a minute. Sustainable. Did it? Tick.
PSA done and sorted. No, I love it.
Um,
I do like it. Saying, aren't you meant to double the price when it's sustainable?
oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Like some people just, yeah. I mean, as I said, and I would like to say that, I think that, from Ardnamurchan perspective, certainly here in the UK, I can't comment exactly on Australian pricing, but we really do try to keep our whiskey for at drinking level, so people can afford to buy it, don't feel guilty about opening it and enjoying it with friends. And that's what we're all about. At the end of the day, we're whiskey enthusiasts making whiskey for whiskey enthusiasts. So that's what we're trying to do here is make obtainable whiskey.
yeah, amazing. Well, now that is all of the whiskies tasted and tried, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the poll with everyone. I'm going to launch the poll. You can vote for your top two favorite whiskies of the night. Connell, you can see the results as people vote and they roll in. It's very exciting. Don't spoil anything. But I will ask you a great little question that I think Nathan and Ronan had some similar question earlier in the tasting. How many people have you got working at the distillery on each shift? Obviously, being remote, a little bit harder to find, people nearby to live and work. And then how many have you got on like your blending tasting team?
So the company wide, including the bottling hall, the sales and marketing team, the production team, the warehouse team, is 38. Um, so that is genuinely pretty lean. But on shift, we've got a stillman and a mashman at any one time. So that's times, two shifts per day. Ali and his team in the warehouse is one, two, three, four. Plus our distillery manager, Gordon Mackenzie, and our small visitor centre team. And also, if anyone is in Scotland and fancies a trip, we've mentioned the road too many times. I think we've put too many people off, but you will be rewarded with incredible scenery and a warm Highland welcome at the distillery if you venture out. And there's always something exclusive there. I don't want you guys making the trip there and not being rewarded for your pilgrimage. So there is always a self-fill, there's always an exclusive release, there's always something there to make it worth your while. We're open pretty much year round. We're obviously closed between Christmas and New Year, but that's just pretty much the whole of Scotland. But yeah, we'll make you welcome if you do decide to make the pilgrimage.
Yeah.
Blending team. So tomorrow we'll have 4 people around the table, 5 people around the table. It will be myself, Carl, Graham, Jenny, and Alex. We don't have Alex could have easily just named himself the master blender and would be well within his rights to do so. but he decided not to do that. He's very much all about. We all come from different backgrounds and we all have different sort of styles and palates. So yeah, we do it as a team, which is a really good way to do it, to be honest. It takes a little bit longer, but it'll be a whole day tomorrow of not tasting. You'll be glad to hear it'd be a very short day if we did that. It's nosing only, but hopefully we can come up with a recipe for the new Paul and Moi, which is the main prerogative tomorrow.
Amazing. Leo asked a great question of, is there accommodation nearby? And I can probably comfortably say it is slim pickings. I think there is one castle hotel restaurant thingy. I would highly recommend, from my personal experience, stay in Fort William to see Ben Nevis, drive the length, see Ardnamurchan, and then hop the ferry to Tobermory and just stay in Tobermory. That's probably your easiest loop around. That's what we did. But
there is a sort of bunkhouse being done up nicely, which is about 2 miles away, and that's almost staggerable. Is that a word? So if you have a few drams at the distillery, you can definitely get there in one piece, kind of. Yeah.
Just
how
like
tall?
slowly
How tall is Carl Crafts? That's a question that I didn't expect to be asked tonight. He is 6'6", which is not great for me, who's 5'10".
Still above average. Still above average.
Why do you know that answer?
I'll take that. Above average is perfect.
I do also, like Ollie has spoiled one surprise. Ardnamurchan is going to be a brand new stop on our Scotland top shelf VIP tour in November next year. So we are adding Ardnamurchan to the lineup. So if you wanted to not have to worry about accommodation and driving and all that kind of stuff and let David sort it out for you, we are headed to Ardnamurchan. So very, very excited for that one.
And I hope to be there. I hope to be there for that as well. So I'm hoping to go for a bit of a deep dive into the warehouses with the group. So it's in the planning. So it's in my diary, and I hope to be there to host the team, whoever comes over next year.
Yeah, 100%. I think we've got a few other questions, but I might leave them to send out in the wrap-up email, because I think we've got almost all of the participants having voted. If you haven't got your vote in, get your vote in now or forever hold your peace. And I will end the poll, share the results, and then Ollie will tell you all about where you can find these bottles that you love so much. So ending the poll now, inserting the drum roll, and I think, when I said that it was the whiskey that got the most comments, the most chat, Heritage Barley Golden Promise absolutely delivered on its promise. And you can keep that dad joke for the bank. I'm having a dad joke off with Rob Mackenzie in the comments. But second was the Sauternes Cask Peated, narrowly followed by the Madeira and the 10-year-old Midgie, and then the core single malt coming up in 6th place. But an absolutely phenomenal set of whiskies. Like, I don't think that I could have picked between them, so luckily I don't get to vote. But absolutely spectacular. Ollie, did you want to give a little short piece about where people can find these Ardnamurchans?
Yeah, while I load a question for you, Connor, are you surprised by those results? Is that kind of similar to the European market, or Aussie's completely, upside down?
Well, you are upside down. But
I'm trying to out dad joke me.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. No, listen. Here, the Punnage warehouse is strong with you, Emma.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Let that one sink in. Look, actually, no, I am surprised. As I said before, we even tried this whiskey. The heritage barley is not been made to be a quaffing dram. It is a challenging dram. It's a dram that you need to pause and think. I mean, obviously, the crowd here tonight, they're no novice, and I'm not saying that you are, but even still, like, I mean, I remember pouring it in Italy literally last week, and it was dividing the room in Rome. I love it, but then we put it together, and I was really happy with it. But yeah, for that to win tonight, I mean, if before the tasting, if we were taking bets, I would have probably put the bet on the Peated Sauternes or the Madeira. So to see Ardnamurchan in its birthday suit, pure distillate, for me, that's just, yeah, that's dream come true for me.
That's very cool. So stock's on its way. It's on a boat. It will arrive very soon in the next week or two. It needs to clear customs, but we have already put the call out to a wonderful group of independent bottle shops located from the east coast to the west coast of Australia, from top down. A number of them are online. Ardnamurchan, we want to grow this core brand. We import a number of brands, but this is very special for us. So for us, we want to see as many of you drinking it and having so many. I haven't listed even the bars. A lot of bars will be taking it as well, your regular whiskey bars across Australia. But these independent retailers, support them for Christmas. Their stock will be arriving sort of in the next 2-3 weeks. And yeah, in terms of pricing, you're looking at the single malt starting around, these are recommended retail pricing. So around $109 Australian. The Heritage Golden Promise will be 165, and everything will be in the middle. So 125 for the Midgie, the Madeira, the Sauternes around 145 Aussie. So you've got some really good accessible pricing. There's so much Scotch whiskey out there that's going 150, 161, even $200 north for some entry level core range stuff, and that's their decision. Ardnamurchan is very comfortable where they are, and they really want to get as many Aussies drinking this amazing single malt whiskey. So they've been very fair with us on the pricing, and we've passed that straight on to the consumer, and the retailers are doing the same. So yeah, please support your independent bottle shops. And if there's someone that's missing that's around you, drop us a line, cheers@thewhiskeylist.com.au. We will reach out to them as well and see if they can stock Ardnamurchan.
Yeah, I think that's incredible pricing comparing it to the UK. Now I know you guys are hammered with your duty, but I mean the UK keeps putting it up. It seems to be every 6 months as well. So yeah, 165 for Golden Promise is very good. And considering you're 70 to 78 pounds in the UK, that's great pricing for Australia, and I'm absolutely delighted to hear that. That's accessible. That's drinking whiskey, which is great. And just one other thing for me is really hoping to get some flights booked to come out to market next year. Hoping to be there around May time. So hopefully I might see some faces that I've seen tonight on screen.
Yeah, we'll definitely be letting everyone know when Connal's in town. And yeah, obviously doing as many events, pouring as much Ardnamurchan and Adelphi whiskey as we can. So, but we will definitely be getting Connal back for an Adelphi tasting in the future. Otherwise, thank you so, so much, everyone. It was an amazing big group tonight, and I love Connal. He's a great guy. I've known you for a couple years now, so anytime we get the chance to hear from you, it is always very, very special. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in tonight. We will hopefully see you maybe at the last virtual tasting of the year next week. If not, we will see you in the new year with exciting, fun, delicious drams. So take care of yourselves, have happy holidays, and we'll catch you at the next one. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Merry Christmas.